Good evening. How are you? Well, according to Thomas Jefferson, we've got ideal weather, almost anyhow. It's 81 degrees. The humidity is 62%. And according to Thomas, the winds are blowing at 2.9 miles an hour. I can't feel it here, but there it is. We have been studying how our Trump regime has been suppressing individual rights and liberties. But the difference between this and a normal tyrant takeover is that we keep scoring victories in the sense that in court, in rallies, in reportage, in demeanor, and in terms of extraordinary scandals about abusing children and young adults, young women, 18 and over, depending on the state that you're in. So what we should look at as studies for our own resistance is who and what is hurt and under what circumstances. So let's start with Mr. Garcia. Garcia was and is a 30-year-old. He's been living in New Jersey. He's here without papers, except for a court order that said under no circumstance should he be sent to El Salvador. The government claims he's a member of a gang, but there's no proof of that, no objective proof of that. There is the statement that they make, but they make these terrible statements, defamatory to all sorts of people of high and low station, of celebrity and not, because that's part of the coercion and discreditation of the people who become the targets of the regime, because they don't want the critics of the Trump regime to be listened to be believed. And so that's the exercise. Now let's go talk about Garcia. So Garcia was taken off with I think it was 260 other deportments, if you will, migrants that they were leaving the country, holding no hearings for any of them, that is to determine and to prove that they had done anything that justified deportation. In Garcia's case, there was an admission by a member of the Trump administration and the Justice Department, the Injustice Department, that they'd made a mistake. He wasn't supposed to go there. And then they immediately shit-canned him in some way or other. Right now, I don't remember if they fired him. They certainly moved him out of the way. And then there was a big kerfuffle about denying that they had made an error. And pretty soon, it turned out that he was returned. He was taken in March. He was returned to the United States in June. And they indicted him for smuggling illegal migrants, so they say. And that's the indictment they're holding over him. And they threaten to send him to Uganda if he doesn't plead guilty to the charges that he was smuggling aliens. Isn't that something? And so that's going to be in court on maybe as soon as tomorrow, Monday. On Friday, he was released by the judge, who said there was no need to keep him in custody, and he has an ankle bracelet, and he was rejoined with his family since then. The question is, will they spirit him away to Uganda? Why is Uganda involved? Uganda's involved because they get favors. They would like some favors and tariffs, perhaps funds. So that's the beginning and the end of that problem. We have to keep in mind that there's been no due process, meaning fundamental fairness. I tell you what the charge is. You get a chance to answer the charge. We put on evidence and decide if the charge has merit. If it does, then there's a sentence. If there's not, then there's a dismissal. Nothing like that's happening for the people who are being deported. In fact, there's a kind of rush to avoid the law. Like somebody came into the candy shop And as they're making noise, these people run out the back door rather than face the fact that they had no legitimate reason to be there in the first place. So that's Garcia. That's an example of Trump just us. Judge Roy Bean had a better sense of what was fair and equal before the law. But these people make fun of the fact, oh, you want liberty? Ha, 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 this judge is liberal. You know what liberal means? Liberal means free. Liberal means recognizing what's fair and just. And that is not the business of the Trump regime. Revenge is, suppression is, control is, dictatorship is, but these other things are not. So that's one thing. Now, we also have the vice president, Hillbilly Vance. And he's describing, and remember, he's the vice president. He's describing possible outcomes for Bolton and describing a search of Bolton's home and office and suggesting that this isn't because he's criticized the administration. Oh, no. We just want to be fair about him, holding on to secret documents and, using them. Now, this drama over the books and articles and appearances Bolton made has been vetted, at least the book was, before it was released. And we may or may not find there's anything here. And if they had an affidavit of probable cause, which is required to get a search warrant under the Fourth Amendment, it would be really interesting to see that affidavit. The fact that we haven't seen it may mean there's no there. They went to a friendly magistrate late at night and got it signed. Or they picked the judge very carefully. They made statements that may be true or not, because nobody gets to confront these things before the search occurs. And so we have Bolton now is in the hot seat, and the vice president is talking about it when no one should be talking about a pending criminal investigation, and no one should be opining about what's going to happen next, not even the Attorney General of the United States. But this is what's going on. And they count on nobody saying this is not how business is done when you have just business, when you have equal justice before the law. And that includes Bolton as well as someone they would deport, a reporter, and on, because the First Amendment doesn't limit in any way what they can ask and of whom. So there's that. Now, what are we going to do about it? Well, I hope his attorney is going to go in, and I think he said this, and talk about vindictive prosecution, selective prosecution, that without the goods to do it, they want to destroy his credibility on the ongoing debate, so that when people say Bolton said such and such, the Trump regime, through his various newspeak authors, can go out and say, oh yeah, but he's been searched and seized and things like that. That's what's going on. So Hillbilly Vance rang the bell on Bolton. It seems to me as more of a propaganda campaign than of a legitimate exercise of the vice president's powers. The vice president does not have this power, does not have this authority. In fact, nobody in the Injustice Department has the authority to do this. And they don't. They don't release the affidavits. And the entire proceeding is supposed to be secret. And the only answer that should have been was something like, oh, we don't comment on investigations. But they want people to leak. So instead of the narrow leaks that may occur, well, they ran right up the line, forgot about leaks, and let the vice president express himself that way. That tells us we're in a third world country already. These kinds of things don't happen in a real democracy, ours included. And in the past, this did not happen, not this way, not ever. So the next thing that's impulsed that's interesting is it impossible to think quickly when you're interviewing a guy like the vice president. The host interrogated, and that's just not true, Vance. Vance said something like, we're really concerned about securing the confidential material. Whoa, hold it a second here. If I'm the host, you know what I say, right? Florida. Isn't it a fact that Trump kept top secret documents in his bathroom, that he dressed them out and quoted from them in New Jersey when third parties were present? Isn't it a fact that people in his employ hid top secret documents? No questions, no statements. We don't want criminals, Vance said. Not that we're saying Bolton is a criminal. Oh, okay. What the hell is Trump? What the hell is Trump? How many felonies was he convicted of? He was the one who called for an uprising to overthrow the election, to get the vice president to help that happen, or the mob thought, or to hang him out in plain view. How is that not pertinent to an interview with Vance? Did somebody hit the host with a frying pan square in the face, and all of a sudden she didn't know that Trump had been investigated in Florida, and basically there was an indictment, and they should have never dropped the case. They should have persisted in it until they got that judge impeached. But no, they didn't do that. And what can you say about the jury? You can't say that that any federal figures were responsible for a DA prosecuting Trump and convicting him beyond any question. And if it wasn't for the muscle that you and I wouldn't have to get ourselves out of a scrape like this, he would be in jail now, or prison probably. So, and then there's another one, our boy Trump, talking about overcompensating. Now he's talking about, they're going to go to Baltimore. They need military forces there. Yeah, and in Chicago too. Well, what about Chicago? We have to do something about Chicago. This is the state of America. But we see judges pushing back. We see the judge pushing back in the Garcia case. We see the lawyers pushing back in the hillbilly Vance situation. But they want to be careful because they don't know if these guys will transport Garcia, bang, overnight to Uganda. Not a good place to be. About to have elections itself. Not recommended for Americans to visit. Maybe there isn't any foreign nation state we'd be welcome these days with this guy Trump in the White House. So what you have to do is you have to pay attention better than the host. When somebody like Vance says, we're really concerned about doing these things lawfully, what the hell does he know about it? Was he in the Justice Department? Was he a prosecutor? And only if he were in the Justice Department today should we be hearing anything. And because it's still only an investigation, we shouldn't be hearing anything at all. So these are a collection selected at random of the bad acts since my presentation last night. And I expect we'll see more. And courts and individuals and elected officials who haven't lost their cojones, and people who write stories about this, think about it. Think about what they're saying and contradict them instantly in that minute. And if you can't do that, don't do the interview, because you cause more harm by allowing disinformation to be spread that you're not up to contradicting. So that's it. And so I say goodbye to you from my Cathedral of Trees, and look forward to talking to you tomorrow. Bye-bye.